Many thanks again for joining us on the program. Well, we'll begin this hour in the United States, where the House of Representatives is about to reconvene after a dramatic night which saw Republican leader Kevin McCarthy fail in his bid to be elected House Speaker. In the first day of what could prove to be a brutal showdown between a divided Republican caucus, McCarthy failed in 3 ballots to achieve the 218 votes needed to become Speaker, a role second in line to the Oval Office after, of course, the Vice President. Well, this morning, former President Donald Trump called for far-right Republicans to end their blocking of McCarthy's candidacy. Well, speaking after last night's session, McCarthy said he would continue to fight for America.
And they even came to the position where one, Matt Gaetz, said, I don't care if we go to plurality and we elect Hakeem Jeffries and it hurts the new frontline members not to get reelected. Well, that's not about America. And I will always fight to put the American people first, not a few individuals that want something for themselves. So we may have a battle on the floor, but the battle is for the conference and the country, and that's fine with me.
Meanwhile, President Biden called the situation embarrassing and says he hopes lawmakers will get their act together.
With regard to the fight over the speaker, excuse me, that's not my problem. I just think it's a little embarrassing it's taking so long in the way they're dealing with one another. And the rest of the world's looking. They're looking at, can we get our act together? And what I focus on is getting things done. And the one thing I'm going down to Kentucky and Ohio today is to demonstrate we can get things done. Look, how do you think this looks to the rest of the world? We're finally coming out of, the first time we're really getting through the whole issue relating to January 6th. Things are settling out. And now, for the first time in 100 years, you can't move. I mean, I really mean it. I know you know international relations. It's not a good look. It's not a good thing. It's the United States of America, and I hope they get their act together.
And for more on this story, let's now cross live to Capitol Hill, where we are now being joined, of course, by Arise U.S. correspondent Eric Ham. Eric, thank you so much for being here. Well, as predicted, you did predict this yesterday. But just before you came on, we've just heard from President Joe Biden, who's actually calling the situation a little embarrassing. And even former President Donald Trump has called for the Republicans to unite. What is the latest there?
Well, Amaka, we're actually coming into part 2 of what is going to be considerably an epic floor fight between Republicans. We saw yesterday those 3 rounds of voting. And we just have to face it. Kevin McCarthy was nowhere near the 218 votes that he needed to actually secure the speakership. And we heard from him last night, and he gave us a different take on what he thinks could happen today, where he now believes that he could actually get to a number that is a lower threshold than the 218 that's needed. And so we saw yesterday where the Democratic minority leader Hakeem Jeffries got to 212. So his entire caucus voting for him to be the next speaker. And so what Kevin McCarthy is now saying is he just needs to get to 213, and somehow the rest of those members that are not supporting his candidacy will either fall off or vote present. Because here's what happens is that you don't need all of the members that are in the room to vote for you. What you need them to do is either vote present or abstain, and they're going to take a majority plus 1 of the number of people who actually vote for some person specifically. So those 20, Kevin McCarthy is now hoping that he can at least turn 11 of them, and then the other 9 will either just vote present or vote or abstain from voting. But based on what we're seeing and what we're hearing from our sources about some of these members, that doesn't appear to be the case. So we don't know what Kevin McCarthy has up his sleeve today, if anything at all, that will get him to this magic number. Also, we're hearing from a number of Democrats that they are not going to actually do anything to try to help McCarthy get to that magic number. So it is not expected to be Democrats who are going to come in and save McCarthy, voting with Republicans to actually secure the speakership for Kevin McCarthy. So this is still expected to play out. The question, of course, is how long is this going to take? We know going back 100 years that Congressman Gillette, it took 3 days and 9 ballot tries before he became the Speaker of the House. The question now is, can Kevin McCarthy do it in a shorter amount of time? Only time will tell. But what we're expecting today is another round of fighting, because those 20 Republicans who refused to back McCarthy, they seem entrenched. And now this is a game of chicken between those far right Republicans and Kevin McCarthy. And now we're watching and waiting to see who's actually going to blink first.
Well, Eric, while we wait for who is ready to blink first, of course, there's a live pictures just beside Eric there. The House, of course, they're reconvening. Hopefully, they will have another round of voting tonight to decide maybe if Kevin McCarthy will eventually scale through or not. But, of course, live pictures there from Washington, D.C. And, Eric, you're just right in front of the building there. The fact that the Democrats have called Kevin McCarthy weak, surely he manages to cross the line as leader eventually, if that happens. After how many days, we're not sure yet. But this would actually dominate his time as Speaker, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And look, one thing that is of consensus that everyone can agree on, Republicans, Democrats, senators, House members, and even people who are watching this play out behind me, Kevin McCarthy, should he actually become the Speaker of the House, will be undoubtedly the weakest speaker in the nation's history. And not only will he be the weakest speaker, but because he has given so many concessions to these Republicans, it's unclear how long his tenure will actually last, because now he has agreed to lower that threshold of Republicans who can actually call for a no confidence vote to remove him as the Speaker of the House. So that number was set at 50. It is now actually moved back to 5. I'm sorry, I was just getting some new information in about what we're hearing on the floor right now. But again, you're right. He's going to be a very, very weak speaker at this point. And in fact, what we're hearing from a number of U.S. senators, Republican senators, is that they are deeply concerned about how weakened he will be if, in fact, he does take the speakership, because what we are now learning is that they believe that it's going to be difficult for the House and Senate to agree to get anything done to actually be able to move the legislative process forward. And of course, we know two of the biggest fights that are coming up down the horizon, beginning around August, September, will be fights to raise the debt ceiling, and of course, to actually agree on a new budget. That's where we're going to see the biggest fights between now and the end of the year. But also because we know in the next few months, the race for the White House will begin to actually heat up, as we're expecting Joe Biden to announce that he will be running for re-election next year. And additional candidates on the right will also announce. And so this is now damaging the Republican brand. And we've already heard from the chair of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel, who has said as much just in the last day, that this is damaging Republicans. This is damaging them with their voters and their constituents. And it's creating a lack of trust in Republicans' ability to govern, because what we're seeing right now is they can't even pick a speaker.
Well, Eric, really tough times for the Republicans. Of course, just in November, they won the House, but now to get a speaker is just really tough for them. But we'll wait and see how that plays out. But the big concern now is, if there's no resolution today, what next? Can the country still function?
Well, one of the good things, and it's clear that Democrats, when they were in leadership, and even Senate Republicans, they were prescient and saw what was actually on the horizon, which is why they actually advanced a budget, a nearly $2 trillion budget for the U.S. government to fund the government through the end of fiscal year 2023. So the issue of actually being able to fund the government, to keep the lights open, to keep government employees working, to keep the military working, All of that is done until the end of the fiscal year, which ends at the end of September of 2023. So that is not going to be a massive or major issue. But of course, what we do know is that right now, these House members behind me, they themselves are not getting paid. In fact, we are learning that if this is not rectified in the next couple of weeks, and many hope that it will be by then, but if it's not, also staff members, thousands of them will not actually be working will not be getting paid either. So this is becoming an issue because what we're seeing is one branch of the U.S. Congress is not actively working right now. You don't have chairmen, you don't have appropriations bills that can go through. And of course, Congress' most ardent assignment, which is oversight, that is not happening right now until they identify a speaker and legislative business can happen. And so what we're seeing right now is the House of Representatives has come to a complete standstill. The question is, how long is this going to play out?
Well, the answer is still hovering around. We just wait and see how today plays out to see if we're not going to get a repeat of what happened 100 years ago. But at the end of the day, Eric, I cannot let you go without actually talking about the Republican Party as a whole. We've seen the former President Donald Trump even reach out and say, you know what, support this man. Let's be united. But talk to me about how damaging this whole debacle is for the party.
Oh, it's extremely hard for them right now because, again, this is something. And as we heard President Biden say, this is an embarrassment. This is an embarrassment because the world is watching. And what we're seeing here is just how extreme the Republican Party has become. Donald Trump himself is calling on the party to get behind Kevin McCarthy. And right now, we don't know if they're going to heed the call of Donald Trump, who is still seen as the leader of the party, who many of these people who are not backing Kevin McCarthy, they actually backed the Stop the Steal movement. They backed the insurrection that they believe stole the election from Donald Trump. But will they actually heed his call to get behind Kevin McCarthy? It doesn't appear as though we're going to see that happen between now and this first vote. And so we're still waiting to see. But right now, this is a party that is in complete disarray. And I think this is only going to be a microcosm of what we're going to see play out between now and 2024 when Donald Trump and perhaps other Republicans decide to actually make a run for the White House. This is only the beginning. So strap in, buckle your seatbelts. This is going to be a wild, wild ride that the Republicans are going to take us on here in Washington.
And Eric, we're here for it. It's all a waiting game, and wait we shall continue doing. Eric Ham, for your in-depth analysis tonight, we say thank you. Eric in Washington, D.C. for us there.